Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I forgot to point out yesterday, which you noticed, that we're in a different part of the 5 good minutes studio, and that's because things are stored in the other corner of the 5 good minutes studio. We have some large events coming up, and things end up in this office. I hope you enjoy the view of my cherry tree out that window, and in my peperomia and my Christmas cactus. So anyway, um, we're continuing our study of the Psalms written by others, written by Solomon, written by Moses, Heman, Ethan, and the sons of Korah. We've studied the Psalms of David. We studied the Psalms of Asaph. Um, I'm not going to do one called the anonymous Psalms. At least I have no plans to. We're in Psalm 90, the Psalm by Moses, which is perhaps the oldest, likely the oldest Psalm that we have. Some of the anonymous psalms may be older, but this is certainly one of the two or three best known psalms. And as we are going to take some time to talk about the difference between David and Moses and their relationship with God, I do want to point out that David would have grown up singing this song. And he's so familiar with it, which we can tell from Psalm 103 and several other psalms where he quotes or refers back to this psalm. Moses. Some of the verses of this song are repeated or very nearly repeated in Deuteronomy 33 when he's making his farewell and he's making his address, particularly the part about our mortality and our sin, and God being our own personal God. And so I don't know whether he's quoting his own song or whether this is something he was writing at the time as these notions were on his mind. We pointed out yesterday that even though Moses had greater proximity, physical proximity to Yahweh than anyone else in human history, except for Jesus, of course, um, we do not see any familiarity, any disrespect, any liberties taken in this psalm. What we see at the end of Moses' life, a life that for um, 40 years has been lived in close physical proximity with Yahweh, where he talked to him every day, at the end of every day, as a man does his friend, is great respect. He's still taking off his shoes because he knows he's on holy ground. Um, but let's look at the content. We said that yesterday he begins with God's eternality, that God is eternal, and that God is ours. Then we have the thought that we humans are not like God at all. We're mortal, and that our mortality is God's doing. God created us to live forever, giving us access to the tree of life. But then we sinned. And so it's God's decision, and it's the result of our sin that we are mortal, and we are mortal. And if there's one overwhelming theme in this song, it is this mortality, which hangs over us like the sword of Damocles, that we don't know when we are going to die. So we need to learn to number our days. And then in verses 7 through 12, we have uh, the fact of our sin and that God's anger is justified and that the bad times we have had are of our own making, that we deserve them. And then we have his requests. And we didn't talk about that yesterday, just to say that he makes his requests. And this is where he really cries out and uses God's name. Do return, O Yahweh, how long, how long? And be sorry, feel sorry for your servants. And he's satisfying them with us in the morning, satisfy us in the morning with your loving kindness, hesed, covenant loyalty. Make us remember that you keep your covenants even though we don't, and help us to take joy in your keeping of our covenants together, and make us give us as many good days as we have had bad days, he says. you know um, make it even out 50-50. Make us glad according to the days you have afflicted us and the years that we have seen evil. Let us see your majesty and glory. It's amazing that he says this because he has, and the children of Israel have. He's been on the mountain. They were at the foot of the mountain and afraid to get near. They have seen the pillar of smoke. They have seen the pillar of fire every day. And they still see those things. They receive manna and quail, and they will receive them till they cross the Jordan. And they haven't crossed the Jordan yet. And so they have these physical reminders every day of God's presence, physical manifestations of God's presence every day. And he asks that those will continue and continue for our children too. Let them know who you are and see how great you are and confirm the work of our hands. Confirm the work of our hands. The things that we're about to build, let them stand. Now, what are they about to build? They're about to build a nation with God as the head. And so this is a national request, a national prayer. Um, and it is a fitting song, a fitting prayer to sing at the end of his life as he's handing over leadership to Joshua, and as they are about to enter the the promised land. We know how quickly the cycle of sin we read about in the book of Judges took hold. We know they need to hear this, and we know this is the exact prayer that he needs to pray. But his outlook is limited, and his expectations are limited. His outlook is pretty bleak about humanity, and that God is right to be angry at us, and we deserve our consequences. But can we have a little bit better than what we deserve? Can you just make the bad days equal the good? Can you remind us of who you are? That's the great gift that we need if everything's going to work. Can you do the same for our kids? And can you just establish the work that we're about to get started? Just make it last, because it won't without you. It reminds us of something we're going to read Solomon say in Psalm 127: unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain who build it. And that notion is right there at the end of this psalm. We're about to build a nation. Please establish it. Keep it going because we can't without you. Okay, that's Psalm 90. We're going to talk a little more about it. Psalm 90 and Psalm 23 next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.